Hello, welcome to Real Television. My name is Spencer, and today we're breaking down Underworld Rise of the Lycans. Oh! So, in honor of the No Kings protest that was literally today as the time of recording, I wanted to kind of do something that is both a part of the spoopy season that is now upon us, but also something that talks about freedom and freeing yourself from tyrants, hence the No Kings. And since I couldn't go because I have car problems, or had car problems at the time, since I'm recording this later after the fact so that I can edit the video, and since I couldn't go, I just wanted to put something out there, both because I want to do something as far as doing another video, but also because I wanted it to also have a connection to that. Because I want to do something, but because I'm a minority, I'm a little afraid. I'm not gonna lie. But in putting myself out there online, that's probably even worse. But I'd rather get the message out this way and maybe help a few people make a decision to go to the next one or participate in the next one. This one's going to be a little bit more oriented to the political side of things and the morality of things that are happening right now. So if you don't like that, that's okay, but I would still give it a listen because there's still some good things that you could probably take from the video on the individual scale rather than the social or political scale. All things are scales, to be honest, and it's a measure of who we are and where we're at in our spiritual / life journey here together. So you don't have to take my word for it, but this is just something I put together so that it would kind of help people kind of open their eyes just a little bit more. Not like the full way, but if it does and it ends up like shaking you to your core, I'm sorry. But at the same time, you needed to know.
I'm in danger!
But yeah, I just kind of wanted to do a fun little spoopy video, but with purpose. So I hope you guys enjoy. So before we get into the actual breakdown, I did want to talk a little bit about what the synopsis of the movie is in case you are not familiar. Underworld Rise of the Lycans is about Viktor, who's played by Bill Nighy, the cruel king of the vampires, who has persecuted the Lycans for centuries. Young Lycan Lucian, played by Michael Sheen, rallies his people against Viktor and his death dealer warriors. With his secret lover Sonja, who is played by Rona Mitra, I think that's how you say her last name, a vampire at his side, Lucian leads the werewolves in a final battle to break free of enslavement, or die trying. And I feel like this is sort of significant that my intuition told me to break this one down prior to realizing that the No Kings protest was going on that weekend. It's just something to think about. It's something always in the back of our minds of what are we allowed to do? What are we going to do about it if we can't do the things that we love or be ourselves? You know, what are we going to do when tyranny strikes? And oftentimes it is sinister in the sense of how it takes over. It's never straightforward because if you knew, you would be instantly against it, and it worms its way into your mind, as Viktor says in one of the scenes, as far as when he talks about emotions, which I'll get into here in a minute. But it's something to keep in mind for sure, that tyranny is never straightforward. It is always in the shadows. That's why it's so hard to see coming, because it's not something that is easily accepted. And so they have to be deceptive about it. So that's a good one to start off with. But let's go ahead and get into the deep dive. Life is like this sometimes. It feels like we're in this fight for being understood or defending ourselves against people who don't have our best interest at heart. And we have to have that wild nature to say, no, I accept myself. I have skills. I have worth in my own human being on this earth. And the mental fight is just as tiring as this physical fight on the screen here. So it's important to sharpen your mind like a whetstone, sort of like how Tyrion Lannister says in Game of Thrones when he's talking to Jon Snow. Because, quite honestly, no one's going to have your back except you, or like really close friends, or family that is always going to be there for you. And to do that, the fact that he has no shirt on in this scene, it's showing me in my mind that you have to be vulnerable. You have to be your complete self to find those who actually care about you, or people who want the best for you. And that's hard sometimes, and it can feel like a battle. I know all too well how that feels like, because I feel like half my life, or at least most of my life, I've had to do that unconsciously. I've had to learn over the years that being authentically me costs some of the people in my life. And quite honestly, it's good for me, because at that point, I'm not dimming myself, I'm not shrinking myself, and I'm actually making room for people that I actually want in my life, you know? And I feel like people should really take that to heart, because just like Lucian here, he was born and he had to kind of find his own way and traverse truths about himself with no help, I'm sure, trying to understand his own worth and why he was constantly controlled and why the vampires wanted him to never realize how strong he is, and have always been trying to get him to protect them and give him special privileges because of his power. They're actually afraid of him because he's different, and they realize the strength that he carries. Just like people who don't have your best interest at heart treat you, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, like the vampires are doing here. It's a subtle manipulation that puts you in a spot that they want you to be in, rather than being in mutual connection, for lack of a better term. And Lucian very clearly here shows that the archetype that he's working in is called the outlaw or the rebel, whatever you want to call it, but he's challenging norms and seeks revolution eventually. He's the hero of this story. And if you think about it in the elemental layer, like the symbolic elements, he would represent air and fire, I would say, because he embodies the tenacity that is needed for revolution and the intellect that's required to plan one. And it's because of his circumstances that he was able to do that. So, for example, if they didn't give him special privileges and taught him how to fight and strategize and everything like that, he wouldn't have been able to plan something like that. He wouldn't have been able to pull off something like that, because in doing so, it taught him confidence. It taught him to stand up for himself to a point, of course, within safety, and to think of the long game and keeping certain secrets for himself, like the love that he gets being with Sonja and her as well, reciprocally. And right now in the story, I would say that we're at the story element 1 of the hero's journey, which is the ordinary world. This is how his life is. This is the beginning of the story for him in his life. This is all he knows before he falls in love with Sonja. This part makes me feel like, with the dynamic of werewolves and vampires, or Lycans, whatever you want to call them, it makes me think of my previous video about Interview with a Vampire and how vampires typically represent that archetype or that human behavior of narcissism, or draining people's energy, or just in general thinking they're higher than anybody else as far as hierarchy in social dynamics or whatever. But the issue here is that, in my mind, this shows how in situations with narcissists, they will use past people against you, such as these people, and make you feel like it's your fault, when all you wanted was connection and was trying to do the right thing, for example, and they make it seem like you're a terrible person, sort of like a werewolf in this sense, in this scene right here, where he's trapped these 3 people in a cage with Lucian, who can't control his change right now, and forces him to eat them, and how that resembles and mirrors that specific dynamic in my mind. I mention that because I've been through something sort of like that, like I've explained in previous videos with, you know, an ex of mine that I was married to. I don't think he even realized that he was doing that, but that's what it felt like. So in my opinion, we've got to take scenes like this, if we think of something in our mind, if it makes us think of a relationship or maybe someone else in our life or an experience that you had, you really have to analyze the situation and see what it's reminding you of, so that you can understand why it reminded you of that. Because at that point, I feel, when I did that, I realized something about that relationship and how bad it actually was for me. And I took the steps to rectify that in my mind. and help myself feel better in a way. And again, it's not an end-all be-all solution. This is just a way to start uncovering the subconscious in your mind, like the things you subconsciously associate with specific imagery or sounds or symbols or whatever. And what I mean by seeking connection here is exactly this, because with werewolves, it uses wolves as the animal that you're turning into, right? But the symbolism behind wolves is a combination of like freedom, loyalty, and wisdom, family connection, or even found family connection, community, and duality, which I think werewolves are the antithesis of, or any were creature really, but specifically werewolves in my opinion, because it shows the dichotomy between nature and nurture, or the idea of control and how you don't have control over how you act, or at least the symptom of that in society right now, and how it's just like a chemical imbalance or whatever, which it is. I'm not saying that it's not if there's like a mental health issue, but at the same time, there are steps that you can take, in my opinion, that would help. And that big one is introspection, like looking within and asking yourself questions that are uncomfortable, unfortunately. Sort of like how Lucian is transforming right now. A lot of those questions can be uncomfortable and show you things about yourself that are cringeworthy, for lack of a better term. And I've mentioned before in previous videos that I think that werewolves, when in this uncontrolled state, symbolize how we've lost control of our emotions, for one, which is why a lot of stories use emotions, in my opinion, for what triggers a werewolf to transform in the first place. But not only that, it's that feeling of not feeling truly loved or truly a part of a group, that lone wolf mentality where you sort of feel like, oh, well, I'm fine on my own, I can do this, which you very well could, but it helps to have people who understand, people who welcome you in and make you feel like you have a pack, for lack of a better term, especially if life is really hard or you're going through a lot, just like Lucian in this particular scene. Honestly, this part where Sonja is being chased by the werewolves, it just makes me think of how what I just talked about with wolves and the symbolism of wolves, it's almost like people on a bigger scale picture here, like politics or powers in government or whatever. They want to make people afraid of the power of community, the power of freedom, the power of wisdom, and the duality that is so obvious, and so they make it look evil. Just like how werewolves seem to be evil in every single movie, and yet there's only a handful of stories that make it seem that it's controllable after a certain amount of time, other than this one. This one shows both. It shows the uncontrollable unpredictability of that in the beginning, but then they learn to control it. And so we as a society need to learn to be okay with change. We need to be okay with improving society that benefits everyone, instead of looking at it like, oh, it's something scary or unknown about life. Because in the end, it does improve life for everyone. Because who wouldn't want community? Who wouldn't want loyalty or courage, guidance, wisdom, all of that, especially when it comes to healthcare. The reason I say healthcare is just because, they're attacking. It's to kill in this scene. So I'm assuming people who see that sort of thing like socialism or controlled capitalism, and what I mean by controlled capitalism, I mean like regulated instead of what we have right now. And I feel like healthcare is a big one for a lot of people. Some countries are afraid of socialized medicine, whereas some countries have been doing it for a long time and it's worked out really well. There are some things that can be improved, of course. Like, for instance, the trans healthcare in certain places take years to get on HRT, which could be improved drastically, but they work off the same system. They work off of triage. They work off of, do you have an ingrown toenail versus someone who's actively dying after a car accident? Like, obviously they're going to take care of the most needed issue first. Like, you can wait a little longer for an ingrown toenail. Yes, it's painful, but it's better to prioritize than do yours first and then potentially lose that other person's life because you wanted to be priority. You know what I mean? Like, community means showing other people have priority first in certain situations, and then being willing to change who that is changes on a constant basis, within reason, of course. I'm not saying it's going to change constantly. I'm just saying it's an important thing to think about. And you can also think of this scene as well of family coming to your rescue if somebody has wronged you, and how that illusion of being a knight in shining armor can really just show you the facade that someone might be putting up, if that makes sense. Since we're still going with the vampire equals narcissism angle, like I said, as the archetype, not that you as a person are that, I'm just saying vampires tend to represent that because they are draining blood, they're draining life force, and being around narcissistic people feels that way. And so if we think about the werewolves and the vampires in that symbolic sense of that specific meaning, like I said, this is just my meaning, what I think, it could just be that the ferocity of love and what that might mean. Because when people get fed up enough, they are going to attack in some way. Sometimes peacefully, like the protests going on right now. But sometimes, if it's bad enough, it can start wars over who controls what and, stuff like that, which you sometimes see in divorces and how ugly that can be, But this is just something I've thought about in this scene, so let's move forward. I don't know why I'm stopping it so much, but this right here just makes me think of how in debates, especially when it comes to politics, it can feel like someone is being ganged up on when really they're just being shown a different way, and it feels like an attack to them, or it challenges their worldview, like I said in my intro video. And so they run back to their castles, aka their either echo chambers or people who agree with them without question, that kind of thing. And those people start firing off, and so it starts like an internet war of what ideology is right and what's not, when one side clearly has a better intention, but they're painted to look a different way, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm thinking of right here with this particular scene. But also it can be flipped the other way, where someone is being chased away or ganged up on and humiliated or something like that. But it's a little harder to paint it the opposite way for me personally. But it can be. It just depends on what that scene means to you. And I'd love to hear it on what other people think of this movie symbolically and what it makes them think of. But it also makes me think of, minority groups and how we have to sort of grab any scrap that we can in the sense of werewolves here. I'm talking about hunt down our resources and find them, But in the sense of society at large, it feels like we're painted like this, like these dehumanized people that have no semblance of thought or reason. It just is an evil thing that needs to be gotten rid of, which is sort of something that comes from fascism and other sorts of governments that require someone to be a target. And right here, what they're using to take down these werewolves is these, I don't know how to say it, but it's ballistae, something like that. But basically these giant crossbows, and they throw large bolts or spears, if you want to call them that. But basically a crossbow bolt represents focused intention, discipline, and the power of decisive action in spirituality, according to Google. But spears, on the other hand, can symbolize power, authority, protection, and representing both divine and human might. So depending on this particular interpretation, I would go with the crossbow bolt interpretation, just because it's called a ballistae. I think that's how you say it. And it's functioning like a crossbow, and it has the little feathers on the end. And spears don't typically have those. So I'm going with the crossbow definition. So basically in this sense, we need to have quick thinking and intention on what our words are saying and what impact that has both in our individual lives as well as on the societal level, all the way up to politics. So if your goal is to improve the way you think about specific people or types of people, or maybe a habit that you're trying to break, like smoking, like I did, or vaping in my case, it requires that precision to attain those goals, the focused intent and tenacity to hit the target. And so this can also mean spiritual warfare, according to Google again, like the power of prayer and discernment against deception, like being able to see the truth for what it is, instead of having a blindfold on, like the Eight of Swords energy, stuff like that. You have to have the blindfold off in order to hit your target, which is why they're missing right now. They're not getting the goal of making these creatures out to be what they aren't, which are not creatures or monsters. They're literally just people who don't have control over their transformations in this story. And so we have to empower ourselves and those around us to accurately pinpoint the truth for other people to see and show who the real culprits are. And this isn't to continue, pointing on either side, because that's not the case. The case is that we need to show people who's been duping them this whole time, because they need people on their side in order to continue what they're doing. Just like the vampires here, trying to continue to control the werewolves that they can in order to, quote, protect what they have, their little empire, for the surrounding area. And it's not until they uprise against it that they realize what they've done and that they are angry and want it to stop. And that can be on all levels, like I said, whether it's a relationship or a friendship or an inner turmoil of something that you're trying to stop. You have to realize you have to be absolutely truthful in what's going on in order to see what's happening truly, and then change it the best you can. And it's not going to be an overnight thing for a lot of people. It's something that is a gradual process. And then this scene right here, it just makes me think of how systems like to use people that are in the other side, technically, like gay Republicans or trans Republicans or Latino Republicans or whatever you want to call them, whatever category you want to put them in. But as far as using somebody from the other side, it's the tokenized aspect of it. It's using someone in the out group as the tokenized version of it and using them to show people a lie and have people believe it because they're on their side. It's continuing the propaganda. It's continuing the dehumanization process, in my opinion, of course. And a lot of the times, like in this scene, they don't think about that. They don't think about the damage that they're doing to their own community and to society at large, because if it's allowed to continue like it has been for years now, this is what happens of what's happening right now, where rights are being taken away not only for trans people, but now it's threatening gay people, and now it's threatening cis women. Now it's going to be threatening black people, brown people. It is already affecting brown people and some black people, depending on if they racially profile you correctly in their terms. And it's just a behavior that is learned, unfortunately, because it's the mentality of, oh, if I'm on their side, they're not going to hurt me, right? No, they'll hurt you, but it's not going to be the first one. And that, to me, makes it a lot worse, because anticipation is the worst feeling in the world, or the best, depending on what the goal or the prize is at the end. And in this scene, he's doing it for love. And that, I feel, is very prominent in why some of these people are doing what they're doing, because they see it as an act of love in the sense of trying to show their side, which is good and noble and all that, but their side is propagating more pain for the rest of us, and they don't see that. It's like Christians saying, oh, Jesus loves you, thoughts and prayers, which I have nothing against real Christians, but the Christians that are doing stuff right now, in my opinion, are not true Christians. They are nationalists, Zionists, all of that. Both are equally harmful to the rest of society. And what they're doing here in this movie with the Lycans, enslaving them and everything, that's what they technically want to do with minority groups, or those of us who are not cis, het, straight, or white. I don't know why Spirit is asking me to touch on all of this, but they're asking me to be really bold. So I'm gonna do it. So I hope that's something that strikes a chord with some people watching this, because it's very important that we understand the psychology of why people are acting that way, or acting a certain way, or at least think about that, because I'm not licensed, like I said at the beginning of this video, but this is just my take on the symbolism in movies, and this is the particular one that I wanted to talk about today. But it just reminds me of, as well, the term from the Bible, or at least my version of the Bible, which was in Mormonism, the Book of Mormon / Doctrine and Covenants, where I forget what spot in the book they talked about this, but the term fiery arrows that I used in my intro video as well comes to mind here. It's representing the metaphor of spiritual attacks, or if you're not into spirituality, which is completely fine, you can think of it as, temptation, doubt, fear, hatred, stuff that can corrupt your thoughts or actions if you let yourself think it's okay for too long. It's like leaving the arrow in and cauterizing the wound around it. so that it can no longer heal, and so that you can't recover from that thought process easily on your own. Just like it is required to see a healer when you get shot with an arrow. You have to get it pulled out, and you also have to stop the bleeding, and you have to sew it back up. And when you're not allowed to not have fear or doubt or have temptation or have hate in your heart, it makes it 10 times harder to heal or see other people as human, because you've been constantly attacked by people who you thought loved you. And that's how I feel like a lot of people on the right feel. And I don't think people think about this enough. I'm not saying that they're right or what they're doing or what they did is right. I'm just saying that a lot of them probably feel this way subconsciously, and they feel like they're not heard, they're not taken care of, they're not trying because they don't think it's worth it to try anymore. Essentially, they've been shackled and they don't even know it. So we have to give them at least a little bit of grace when it comes to that. At least I think so, because at the end of the day, they are still human. And yes, some of them have done atrocious things, but that doesn't mean that we treat them the same way that they've been treating us, because that just continues the cycle over and over and over again. Don't we want to stop that? And a way to do that is to show them the right way while healing them. Provide them a space to learn and chuck out and call out the bigotry when it happens, but try to lead them. Sort of like when you go fishing, you have to let them pull a little bit and then start reeling them in a little bit. Eventually, they'll get tired or they'll stop trying to fight it, and they'll realize all this time they could have had something good, and they were told that that good thing was bad because they were using the unknown and fear against them. And that unknown in this story are the Lycans that cannot control themselves. So think about that while we move on. This scene right here where Viktor asks Lucian if it hurts his heart to kill his own kind. And to me, that's the equivalent of people on the right saying, you're one of the good ones, or, you know, you're not like those other gays, or you're not like those other Latinos, or you're not like those other blah, 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 whatever the empty space is in the sentence. To me, that's like saying, or asking rather, are you still one of us? Kind of like good dog, you know, kind of like how they're treating Lucian right here. They're like asking him if he's still on their side, sort of silently brainwashing them to think that they're still accepted. Technically they are, but eventually they will not be, because they are still, quote, of the other side, if you want to call it that. When in reality, we're not even against each other. It's literally just programming that they haven't gotten out of yet because of conditioning and fear and literally not understanding things. And so we have to kind of teach them in a way that they'll understand. And that's partially why I'm doing this, because everybody understands movies. Everybody enjoys movies. It gets under the castle walls and into their watering hole, their personal watering hole, in a way that no other person seems to have tried yet. And this can also feel on the individual level, especially in probably like domestic violence situations, in my opinion. It's a way to control someone in the family dynamic and make them feel like they have no choice when they do, but they just haven't gotten to a point where they realized it yet. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm not trying to call anybody out here. I'm just trying to show similarities and patterns that are present in film, because film mirrors humanity, because stories are written by humans, like I said in my intro video. So if you haven't watched the intro video, it explains a lot better what I'm doing here. So go watch that, pause this one, go watch that, and then come back. This right here, where Sonja has come back from her ride where she almost got mauled to death, and he's saying, I told you to stay within these walls and you disobeyed me, blah, blah, blah. That's sort of how I feel in family dynamics or friendships, when you cross a line that you didn't know was there, kind of shows up and makes you feel like the bad guy. And it could also be in a societal level when people start stepping out of line and not doing as they're told, and it makes the system upset. Sort of like how people are going to protest and are not giving up because they love the country, and they also love their neighbor, and they know that they have to step up. Sort of like Sonja's doing here, but very subtle. She's on her own in this case. This is sort of how revolutions start. It only takes one person to inspire others. So it only takes one person in a family to wake other people up, but only if that person that they're trying to wake up wants to wake up, or wants to see what's happening. If people haven't woken up by now, they're not ever going to wake up. Or they're going to wake up in a way that shakes them to their core of what's happening. It shakes them awake. So they're either not going to wake up, or they're going to have a very, very open view to what's happening, and it's going to scare them. So we have to be there, at least for some of them that actually mean it and really want to change, essentially be cured of their vampirism, if that makes sense. Or at least still have the ability to see where these other people are coming from. Just like in my previous video of Interview with the Vampire, Brad Pitt's character, Louis, can actually feel, and that is his superpower in the Dark Gift that Lestat had mentioned. That's why Armand wanted him so badly, because he could see that he could still feel human emotion. So what I'm saying is that we need to help these people who were on the other side see that it's not a left or right issue, it's a up or down issue, and it always has been. This part right here where Viktor just started saying you will learn the dance of politics, and how the council is very tired of her games, and how the forest is just as dangerous as the council. It just makes me think of how people on the right or the left, they all want the best for their families, right? And he says that here. He says those other people, those other vampires are not my daughter, and it doesn't matter to them until it affects them personally, which is why the war starts later, because Viktor finally sees that he lost his daughter because of his own hatred, but he blames it on the Lycans. And so the cycle of politics continue, and until those in power realize that they have also been duped, it's going to be kind of a hard road for all of us. Some of them know this and some of them do not, so we have to keep that in mind as well. We just don't know who, and if they do, and if they all know, then we know that they have all been corrupted, which it seems very much so now. And only some of them are realizing this and are trying to save their seats in the council for symbolism's sake. But essentially, no matter who you are, you all want the same thing for your family, right? You want them to be safe, you want them to have a good life, you want them to thrive, right? That's something we can all agree on. That's something we should all pursue. We should all be able to have healthcare, we should all have, safe schools, we should all have the right to free speech to a point on either side. But that's just something to think about too, because we all are human at the end of the day, like I said, and we all want the same thing. We want that safety for us and our family members. And to those in the council who say that some lives don't matter, or that people are okay with people dying in order to keep certain rights, those are the ones that need to be exposed. Those are the ones that need to see the light of what they're saying, or actually they need to see the darkness in their words, and we need to shine a light on it and let that light burn, not physically, but exposing their vampirism to the world, if that makes sense. Something to think about, for sure. And this part where they're showing all of the Lycans forced to work, I think that is very much reminiscent of what's happening today in capitalism. And capitalism is good to a point, but what's happening now is unregulated capitalism, and it's late stage capitalism, and we're feeling the effects of it, where we're forced to work for little to no money, or at least basically that, what it feels like, because none of us can really afford to truly live on our own. And there's apartments that are vacant because nobody can afford them. Like, for instance, the apartments right next to the one place that I lived at with some ex-roommates of mine is double the amount that we were all paying. Like, we had $1,400 a month for the apartment we had together, which we split amongst two of us. So the ones across the street are at least $3,000 for a studio, and that's absolutely ridiculous. And nobody can seem to get a job above $20 an hour, and if you do, you're freaking lucky, let me say. But that's not how life should be. We should not feel like we're slaves to the system. That's not how life should be. We should be able to be comfortable, not necessarily stressing every single day of one paycheck being missing because that means we're homeless the next, and that we should be grateful for our positions. That's not how life should be. Look at all these other countries that have regulated capitalism. They're doing so well, at least better than us right now, in my opinion. And this is kind of what it feels like, to be completely honest. It's not freedom, because freedom would mean being able to save money. Freedom would mean being able to have a vacation every once in a while. Freedom would mean being able to have fun in general, being able to afford to go out to the movies once in a while, which is why movie theaters are suffering right now, because nobody wants to go out and spend $30 to see a movie for two people. It's too much or however much it is right now. But some theaters are thriving because some have deals like $5 Tuesdays, like Fat Cats or something. But what I'm trying to say is that life should not be this difficult. It should not be this way. And we've been trained not to help each other, just like this, just like slaves. And I'm not saying that we're slaves now, it just feels that way because it feels like we have to work 10 times harder just to get food or keep a roof over our head, while the vampires sit with their other vampires that are laughing their heads off because we're poor.
Merry Christmas to YouTube and all you poor fuckers out there, you know. And we're going to show, that's pan down. Move a little, move. That's what Christmas is supposed to look like, you poor fucks. And if it doesn't look like this, about 300 presents here. If something ain't right, if your Christmas doesn't look like this.
And this is where corporate greed will get us. This is where we need to start asking ourselves, well, what can we do to change that? What can we do to start regulating this? What can we do to help each other? We need to start behaving like we did in the 80s or 90s. We go to our neighbor and say, hey, can I have a cup of sugar? Or, hey, how are you? Did you want to come to the cookout next weekend? Do you want to play some video games? Do you want to go to the mall with me? That kind of thing. It's hard to do. Yes, I completely understand that. I really do. Because in this area that I'm in now, there's not really anybody to ask to do that. That's my age, you know, and I'm hoping this channel will really take off, because if it does, that means I can leave and I can find people that genuinely want to hang out. And I know that sounds sad. I know it does. But honestly, this is the best part of my life right now. Because this is allowing me to truly be myself and analyze things and voice my opinion. And yeah, it's lonely sometimes, but I'd rather take that than be around fake people. And that's what I feel like we should really prioritize, is finding the right people in our lives that will support what they know is right in their heart, if that makes sense. This part right here, the two slaves that were looking at William after he saved one of them from whipping, it just makes me think of how people look up to those who stand up and defend themselves or others. And it's an example of what we should be doing for minority groups and standing up for them, like trans people like myself, or, you know, black or brown people who are being detained for no reason, allegedly, because who knows if those people are actually ICE members. But with that being said, those who are minority groups, they see someone who is in a minority group or not, and they see what you're doing, and they really appreciate what you're doing. And I really appreciate those who are standing up for trans rights and people who are being detained, any minority group, really, especially the homeless, because at least someone's doing it. There's a lot of people that are doing it now, considering the biggest protest happened literally yesterday as of this recording. And with those, as I mentioned, they've only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, which is great, because that just shows that we inspire each other. We see that it's right for us to stand up because we see things that are changing now, and more people are waking up to the fact that, oh shit, we're in trouble and we need to save ourselves because no one else is going to do it for us. We have to make the choice to wake up and see this, because even if I were to do like a TED Talk somewhere and start talking about everything political, people like that who are not awake yet to the atrocities of what's happening will not wake up. They'll refuse to, actually, and they'll love their shackles more than they love freedom. So we have to show them why being free truly is the best way, if that makes sense. We have to show them facts, and we have to show them like other things. But some of them, like I said before, will not wake up no matter what you tell them. We have to find the ones that are willing to understand. Like just recently, I saw someone debating someone about trans rights and transitioning and all of that for trans youth. And he told them about, I think it was like 50 something studies, and only like 3 of them were inconclusive, about helping trans youth transition in a way that does not affect their body yet. It's only social and style transition, if that makes sense, as far as clothes, and how that lets them live longer because they're seen and understood and they feel safe enough to do so. So with that being said, let's move on. Now, this part right here is intriguing because Viktor's saying, are we not protected by an army of immortals? And this guy says, superbly, but our nobles are not, and we need to figure out how to protect them from the wolves, because they are, quote, the grass in which we graze. Think about that for a second, because they need the nobles, they need the people in order to have this empire that they have. Otherwise, they would be just like the wolves outside their gates if the people realized what they were doing. or what they're not doing in this case. These people in power don't seem to understand the power that they wield and the difference that makes in normal people's lives, because they see the money and they see the power, and that's all they want. And those in power, sort of like this one, not entirely, but people on the council, code word here, who actually want the best for us, still have that power, and they're trying to wield it the best they can. People like AOC or Bernie, you know, they're using that power and that money to be able to advocate for the people. They understand the vampirism, the corruption. They understand how that works and how they see things, because they have access to the people who think like that. So why not believe them if their intentions are pure, like they're saying? Their actions will match their words. And those two are the first two that I thought of when it comes to that, both progressives. But again, this could also be like friend groups and people who, like, for instance, want money and never pay it back, or maybe like people who just want you around because they like to bully you all the time with words and they think it's funny, but you're not sure if it's an actual joke or if it's against you, and so you just keep staying around because you give them the benefit of the doubt, that kind of thing. This part right here where this man is saying a suggestion to Viktor on letting Lycans be outside the gates in the daytime so that they can protect against the wolves on the outside. And Viktor's like, are you crazy? What do you mean? And he suggests basically to give them better quarters, better food, stuff like that, a status essentially. Give them a little bit of power and they'll do that bidding for us, is what he's saying. And what that makes me think of is that it's the argument of the two sides of the same bird, two wings of the same bird. And it's true to a point. I would say that, yes, some Democrats have sort of turned belly up and rolled over for a lot of terrible reasons. And we need stronger backbones of people, like the person who's running for mayor in New York. I forget what his name is, but I'll put it on the screen if I remember. And we need people like that to stand up for people like us that don't have any power, you know? And it just goes to show that, yes, I do agree with the sentiment that there's left and right, but they're part of the same bird, the same system, and that system is broken, because it would not have gotten this bad if it weren't broken already to begin with. And now they're just using it to appease the people so that we don't do anything about it, which is what they're doing here with the Lycans and telling him, oh, let's give them a little bit of hope. And again, I love this quote from the Hunger Games movie.
Why do you think we have a winner?
What do you mean?
I mean, why do we have a winner? I mean, if we just wanted to intimidate the districts, why not round up 24 of them at random and execute them all at once? It'd be a lot faster. Hope.
Hope?
Hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. A spark is fine, as long as it's contained.
And he asks Seneca Crane to contain it. And this is what this man is doing here. He's asking to contain the problem of the fear of change, like I said earlier with the werewolves chasing Sonja. So something to think about there as well. This part just makes me think about how some people are able to date someone on the other side or be married to someone on the other side of political debates, and why Spirit is asking me to be very bold about this and say political stuff about it, but I'm sticking with it, the smaller picture as well. But this right here, it just makes me think of how people are able to date people on the other side. And I will say I have dated somebody who would consider themselves a conservative, but honestly they were more center right than anything. But in my opinion, this is what we need to do. We need to come together. We need to not necessarily come together and do the deed. I'm just saying, I'm talking about coming together and seeing each other as human beings, and that we are all beautiful in our own way. And the beauty of humanity is that we are different, and diversity keeps our species alive. That's what happens in nature, right? All the different types of one species survive by having different versions of it, so to speak. Sort of like how clownfish, when the lead matriarch dies, another one takes its place and turns into a female. Not that everybody has to be trans. I'm just saying that's an example of adaptability and diversity in nature. Not only that, but trans lions and other trans species that exist, like the clownfish, stuff like that. But also the idea of being gay and all of that, melanism when it comes to like Black Panthers, stuff like that. It's a survival technique. It's something that we need to use and improve on for everyone. And to do that, we have to see each other as human first. We have to see each other eye to eye like this and say, what do you need to know? What can I show you? You know, and say, show me the first thing that comes to mind that you think is wrong, and I'll show you studies about it. I'll show you information. And if you happen to be of that, as far as like whatever it is they're talking about, like Black or brown people or immigrants or trans people, whatever, show them, tell them your experience in life and tell them all the things that make you human. You know, like if you feel safe enough to do so, of course, not just anybody. I'm talking about those who genuinely want to know. And that's hard to tell sometimes. Sort of like how here in this scene, Lucian trusts Sonja, but she could turn on him at any point if she really wanted to, and how dangerous it is for him. Not only for her, but he has it worse than her. Because if he's ever found out, they would have him killed. Whereas if they found her out, she might get close to that, but Viktor would never allow that because she's privileged. She has that privilege of power. And so we have to show those who technically have more power than us why they need to listen to us. And sometimes that can't be done with kindness, and I acknowledge that. But what I'm saying is that we need to figure out the best way to do that. And to do that right now, the best way is to go out and protest and keep speaking up on things online, no matter what, through the censorship, through sharing, through commenting on things, through reposting, stuff like that, and calling out bigotry when it happens if you're brave enough to do so. And yes, that does mean, unfortunately, having tough conversations with those that you love, whether that is your family, your friends, your kids, your grandparents, whoever. Unfortunately, myself, I've tried that even before the election, and they just would not listen, and so I have to leave them behind when things start to pop off on here. It's sad, but it is what it is, and hopefully that will be the thing that affects them, with me not ever reaching out. Maybe it's not like I want to be that way. I really don't, because it hurts me to say that, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes, you know, and we have to find that common ground again. But what I'm saying here is that seeing each other as human is the first step, and seeing that we are both worthy of a good life, and neither of us deserves what we're getting right now. And I'm not saying purple revolution, I'm not saying anything of the sort. What I am saying is revealing the truth in whatever way we can, and right now that's through protests and those in power who are doing everything they can to get through to people, those in power and without, like AOC and Bernie Sanders. But let's move on. This part right here where Lucian shows Sonja that he could leave and he asks her to come with him. This is unfortunately what sometimes happens when you show people freedom. They say don't use it. It's too scary. It's too unknown. We don't know if it's going to actually work. When you know for a fact it will work, they just don't believe it. And they refuse to see the evidence in their mind or their eyes. They see the key as fear. It's a defense mechanism. It's something built in from the system. The fear that the system builds in people to be different or see things from another perspective. They paint other perspectives as evil or different or bad, whatever you want to call it. But in reality, the truth will set you free. And some people's truth is based on a lie, and so that foundation will always crumble. You have to base your foundation on truth, otherwise it will always crumble. Like I said, it's never going to stand up to scrutiny. It's never going to improve society. It's never going to improve your life. It's going to keep you in those same cycles of scarcity and fear. So for example, if someone were to tell you, hey, I found a better place to work, would you like to come with me? Because they're allowing me to bring one person and give you a job that pays $30 an hour, but it's all the way on the other side of the country. And it would be really dumb for someone to say no, but the fear of logistics, the fear of a new place, the fear of a new state, not knowing the laws, not knowing the area, not having any friends or family that you can reach out to easily down the road, that can be scary. A new start can be scary, but only if you don't have the courage to ask for help, or only if you don't have the courage to at least try, because this person has given you a job already, and so you know that you're going to be okay. But the idea scares you so much that you don't even want to try, because all you know is that one place, that one state, that one job, and you've had it for so long, and you want to be loyal, but you know in the back of your mind that job would instantly can you if you did any sort of mistake or were late too many times, whatever the case may be. That's one analogy, where other people rule your life, whereas you could have this freedom of moving somewhere else that provides more money, that provides more freedom. And sometimes when people don't want you to be free, they tell you not to use it, or they tell you to shut up, or they tell you that's not true. You know, they deny it. And so, like I said earlier, I'll probably have to leave certain people in the past because that's where they want to be. That's the reality that they want to have. So in spiritual communities, when they say different realities, that's what they're talking about. It's different perceptions. It's not literal different realities, but it can be that way because of the perspective that they have, that it feels like another reality. Just like those people that was on the Humanist Report where he spotlighted somebody talking to their conservative parents and how he has been trying to show them what's been going on, and they just don't believe him because the reasoning behind his father not believing him is because he thought that he wanted to look good and was just giving him fake information, when in fact that information was true. It's a complete different reality for them. And so going from one reality to the other really quickly is scary. So that's why we have to understand that when we try to get people to, quote, convert to the other side, when there's not really another side. It's the people against a system. So anyway, moving on. This right here where Lucian says, we're both children of Corvinus, and we can instantly know that that is a biblical reference, sort of, because it always reminds me of my religious background and how we're always saying we're all children of God, right? And so why are we treating each other this way? Because we're all children of God at the end of the day, right? We're all still human. So why are we having this happen? And he says, well, you want me to stay here for you. You want me to be treated like an animal just to be safe. And we have to realize that some of us stay here despite that so that we can make it easier for those in the future. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people have better lives so that their future posterity can also have a better life as well, because it ripples outward. Whatever changes you make changes the timeline for your family and their posterity. Every choice that you make changes that timeline. And I say timeline because if you were to make a choice such as having like maybe 2 kids or something, and then you decide to tell them, oh, that being gay is wrong or being trans is wrong, and one of them turns out that way, and you only treat the one that's conforming to your perspective as worthy of love and the other one is not. And so when the other child that you haven't given any attention to goes away and never talks to you again, and you wonder, why doesn't my kid talk to me anymore? You're changing the timeline with them, and they're severing any time that they have with you. They don't want to be around you. They don't want to give their time to you anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you're continuing and perpetuating negativity or positivity based on how you treat yourself and other people, not just for your family, but it ripples outward because those things ripple into other people's lives, depending on the severity, of course. But we'll move on. This right here where Viktor says, why are the young so blind to things? Because they risk everything and blah, blah, blah. It just makes me think of how some people say, oh, you'll get more conservative as you grow older. No, the fuck we won't. Are you kidding? The more we are awake to things, the more impossible it is to think that, because the older we get, the more support we need, right? And so with less support means less of a livable lifetime, if that makes sense. Because if we can't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to take care of anybody else, right? And so society can devolve quickly because of that. And that's the reason why the youth are standing up, because they see that the future is bleak for them. And this notion that people will grow more conservative as they get older may have worked for a while in the past, but now it's time to change. Now is time to think of the collective rather than the individual. The individualism is what's, in my opinion, killing the country. But with that being said, it's also something to think about in the sense that some people use their age as a reason to be right because they've lived longer. But what I think personally is that just because you've lived longer doesn't mean that you've learned more than other people. Because if you've taken the time to actually learn things, you would know more instead of just using that as an excuse. And I have somebody in my life that uses the age card all the time. And so I just don't talk to him because he's just clearly not ready for that conversation. And all we can do with those types of people is make sure they're nowhere near power, but also to make sure that we call out the bigotry when we can. And I've done that a few times with this person, and he just digs his heels in more. And so I just leave him alone because he's clearly not ready, just not ready. And it's painful because I want want to help this person, but he just absolutely refuses to and just continues with the dehumanization of other people. And so I've distanced myself as best I can because I'm currently living with them in my situation right now. And I wish I had a different place to live, but right now it's hard. And so if you're watching this right now and you see this part, thank you very much for watching, because it does help with that. But in regards to the people that act like this, that think that their age is somehow an end-all be-all solution to truth, it's not. It's an excuse to not change or not see things another way, because if they realized it at that age, they'd realize a lot of their life has probably been lived in a way that they did not want or didn't even realize that they didn't want. So for example, like I'll use this as an analogy just because I know this myself. I don't know of any other examples, but essentially when someone is older and they know that they're gay and they've been keeping themselves in the closet for years and they decide to come out in their 60s or 50s, they realize that all that time that they had in the past is a time that they could have come out. And yes, it would have probably been hard, because people like that don't hide that type of, life, so to speak. They don't hide being gay for no reason, is what I'm trying to say. So it really is a fear thing, in my opinion, because it's a fear, and that fear is a fear of change itself, and really shouldn't be afraid of is fear itself, because if you're afraid, it's only going to prevent you from trying new things and changing your life in a good way. And so when you stagnate and you don't change, that's what happens, is that you do get more conservative with age. So essentially, when people are telling you that, it's essentially telling you, hey, don't change because it's scary, and that's what I did, and you should do it too, because I'm miserable, and you should be miserable too. That's what it means today. Back then, when it was used, I'm sure it actually meant being more conservative, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to protect the assets. They wanted to protect the future youth. But with changes that have happened, that's only been detrimental, like the stagnation of wages and how that hasn't changed because of those types of people. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but feel free to correct. Of course, I'm open to new information, like everybody should be, because if you're open to new information, that is being open to change. So yeah. With that being said, let's move on. Right here where Sonja says, and besides, you can watch over me from the wall, she's basically just telling him that she can take care of herself. And yes, that's true. But this translates to autonomy and being willing to let people live their lives without fear. And even though it might be different, people need that time in their life to make those choices. Just like when we grow up, we have to do things that we then later regret or find cringy in the future, because it teaches us how we want to live. We learn the lessons as we go. And unfortunately, life is that way. That's all we can really do. That's all anyone can really do. They need to live life and learn the lessons as they go, because there's no test at the end, or there's no pop quizzes. There's nothing else to tell you what to do other than your moral code and how you care about yourself and others, at least in my opinion. And this also shows that maybe it's time for a matriarchy to take place, but the world is not ready for that yet, or at least it seems not to be, at least in this universe, because as soon as she did, they killed her for it, because she was trying to connect the bloodlines, so to speak. And that's kind of what's happening now, is that there's this last breath of patriarchy that is in its dying state, because change has forced itself at this point, in my opinion. And forcing usually means more fear, more control, more intensity, in my opinion. And so when we refuse change, it can be scary, and a lot of bad things can happen, both on a societal level, but also on a personal level. Like, for instance, when somebody goes out drunk with some friends and then they accidentally out themselves as either trans or gay, and then they panic the next day of like, are my friends going to accept me, and blah, 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 because they know that they don't know that their friends may or may not accept them. And that scares them. And it puts them in this dichotomy of like, oh, well, shit, I shouldn't have gone out. I shouldn't have had fun. Because now change has forced itself to happen. That's just an example. And that's not always true. I'm just saying that is an example that I've thought of in that sense. But if we let ourselves control each other, we're going to continue with patriarchy. Whereas if we allow ourselves to have autonomy and have a society where we care about each other and nurture each other, we could have a place that functions similarly like Canada or Norway or whatever other country has this socialized healthcare and regulated capitalism, or something in between. I don't know, but something that would help everyone on a societal level would be ideal. And this just reminds me of my story that I'm writing. And I'm not going to say where this is, but basically I talk about the idea of, so I'm having to re-record this portion where I'm talking about the government in my book that I'm writing, and I wanted to just make sure that everybody knew what I was talking about. So I deleted everything of the audio in this section so that I could re-explain. So what I'm talking about is called democratic confederalism, and it is something that dismantles the patriarchy in a way that starts from the bottom up, just like I was talking about originally, but in a different way. It doesn't prioritize a nation state, which is a Nordic model, or one of the Nordic models, where it prioritizes capitalism and oppression and stuff like that. Whereas what I'm talking about here is found in the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, also known as the AANES, and it's got a system of democratic confederalism, and it's not considered a Nordic model. And I took a screenshot of the role of the state and the power structure of both versions of what I'm talking about, so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm speaking about. And one of the important things that's included is that the economic system between a Nordic model and the democratic confederalism system is that it's cooperative and uses social ecology that aims for sharing the economy based on satisfying the basic needs of society. So like making sure that we help the homeless and helping women and children and stuff like that. It's not that men are not helped in this type of society. It's that they are shown the same level of care that men have always been getting, if that makes sense. And resources are actually managed locally by communes. I really don't like that word, but it's kind of like cities, if you think about it that way. Each city has the goal of self-sufficiency, sort of like how California does. And we'd all have really strong economies in each state. But instead of states, we'd all just be one nation, like we are now. And I could be completely wrong on this. Somebody could definitely correct me if I'm wrong on certain things on here. I'm not an expert by any means, but this is something that I researched on my own to find something that I really wanted to see in the world where I'm at, where I live. So the welfare funding is what I'm talking about in that sense, about resources and everything. It's the city's job to help those that it is, quote, over, unquote. Whereas the Nordic model is funded by a high progressive taxation rate, kind of like what we're all advocating for right now, which is basically just making sure people are taxed according to what they make, and it is redistributed to central government. But I personally don't think that that has ever worked. And I just feel like there's something so much better than trying to fix an old system, because clearly it's time for a change and people are tired of the old system. And while both models prioritize like social welfare and helping each other and stuff like that, the Nordic model is best described as a social democracy, according to Google, operating a highly regulated and highly taxed capitalist system within a strong nation state, unquote. Whereas democratic confederalism is described as, quote, a form of libertarian municipalism or stateless democracy that is explicitly anti-capitalist, anti-state, and relies entirely on decentralized grassroots self-governance, unquote. And because we've lived in a patriarchy for so long, I've equated this to mean a matriarchal society, but it's not. It's two presidents, one male, one female, and that can be any gender. That can be like one male, one non-binary person. That can be a female, one non-binary person, whatever. As long as someone is represented for each type of person that lives there. So in my opinion, we should have one of everybody, one from maybe like each race, and maybe that's controversial, I don't know, but I'm just throwing it out there to see if that is something that maybe would be good for us, where we have one person who's black, who's brown, who's, from the Arab parts of the country, or different areas that have people like that, a man and a woman, or maybe even a man and woman from each of those, like a big council, kind of like what we have now as far as the Senate or the House of Representatives or whatever. But at this point, it's represented by people who are trying to share their viewpoints on what the social issues are for them, so that they can all come together and say, hey, so how do we fix this for this part of our nation? It's kind of like a collective introspection council, if that makes sense, where we sort of function as one big entity together and say, hey, this part of our body isn't working. How do we fix that? Kind of like one person, if that makes sense. Not that we are all one person as a state or or anything like that. What I'm talking about is helping each other and seeing each other's needs and helping that in the best way possible. So we can always take this system. It doesn't have to be rigid in the sense of what someone else is doing. We can make it work for us. And I think that that's probably the best way to do it. But then again, I don't want to perpetuate any sort of racism or anything like that, but that's just the first thing that I thought of, and maybe that's something I need to deconstruct. So I figured, just put it out there and see what people think about that type of government structure and see if anybody wanted to kind of collaborate on what that could mean for everyone. And there could be some other things that I'm missing about how this type of model works, but I feel that by having that sort of structure could work, because if we have so many people and they all have to deliberate and they all have to make laws about something, it's easier to tell each other no or call each other out on things. Of course, it would be good to have term limits, obviously, and that they aren't paid nearly as much as they are now with the current system that we have, just to prevent everything that's happening now from happening again. It's like trying to engineer something that works for everyone and finding those kinks in the system and fixing them, sort of like how you go to the doctor for a cold or a sickness or something that you need surgery for, except on a collective level. So at least that's what I think. So that's why they're fighting so hard to keep it as it is and in fact cement it into governance. So that's why I feel like this scene is really talking to us about caring about each other, but allowing change to happen from patriarchy to matriarchy society. And that doesn't mean that men are less important. It just means that we need to change how we do things and how it affects other people and ourselves. We need to start thinking of others, is the bottom line. So this was part 1 of the Underworld Rise of the Lycans video. I just kind of wanted to put that in there. This is the editing Spencer here. And I had to kind of put that there because during editing, it actually got to literally an hour after doing half of the clips that I recorded for it. So in order to make this digestible, I'm splitting it into 2 videos. That's all I wanted to say. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like. Share the video with somebody that might take something from it, or if they need this, especially if they are someone who is on the fence about MAGA and need some guidance on what that might mean, especially if you can show them the intro video first so that they can see like what I'm talking about in the video. Not that they need it, but it does help a little bit. But with that being said, I appreciate you watching to the end. If you could leave a wolf head emoji in the comments, that would be awesome, just to signify that you did make it to the end of the video, just so I can track if people are actually watching to the end. But with that being said, you don't have to, but it does help with tracking. So with that being said, just keep in mind, as usual, keep your mind and your heart open. Peace.